Hello and welcome to another episode of Tales from a Professional Nerd. My name is Bryan Steele. I will be your nerd today and every other day that you watch my silly little show or any of my other weird things that I do. So today's a special day because we are going to give the entire episode. I'm gonna blur real fast through the weekend, Bryan. It hasn't been that exciting, to be honest, and then get right into it. So today's we're gonna dedicate the episode to a license that I have worked for in the past. Who has really it's full an actual like full on independent grassroots company, just a couple of guys over in England that decided they were going to get things started years ago. I helped them out a long time ago, and I'm helping out them again. It is the world of Cursed Empire. We'll get into the specifics of it and the history of it because I have a special treat for you today. We're actually going to go ahead and get a hold of the mastermind behind Cursed Empire, the owner, proprietor, manager, CEO, top notch, the big cheese in charge at Spartans Unleashed. That is Chris Loizou. He's a friend of mine. He's a coworker. He's an employer. He is amazing. You guys are going to get a real kick out of him because he has got so much to tell about this special world and the future that it beholds and what's coming for the license and for gamers in general. So that's why I wanted to go ahead and give him this episode basically completely to focus on himself. But before we get to that, let's go ahead and blur through the week in Bryan. The week in Bryan has been good. I've been playing a lot of Sea of Thieves on my Xbox. It's spring break for the kids, so they've been busy doing kids stuff, playing a little Minecraft with them here and there. I'm getting some painting commission stuff done, working super hard into the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers adventure book, and working a little bit on the Shadowrun novel. Got a little bit of D&D in this weekend to get another session of the family D&D game, so I'm super excited about that. But yeah, so it's been a pretty basic week here for the Bryan. Aside from, I have officially been scheduled for my vaccination for the COVID virus, so just one step closer to getting us back to normal. Gen Con announced that they're going to have a hybrid show this year. It's going to be legitimately halfway there, in person, that sort of thing. Who knows whether or not I'll be able to go? Who knows whether or not I have a company that will take me? I don't know. But yeah, that's basically been it. Just a lot of work, a little bit of play, a little bit of paint. Got what my Conquest Last Argument of Kings. Got some of my models put together for that. Still haven't read fully through the rules. Nor have I tried to, honestly, been too busy. Yeah, printed the last couple of things for my first official with print proxies game of 40K with my special squat codex that I wrote. We'll see how that goes. And I'm sure I'll tell you all about it next week. Because next week, I'm actually going to devote the entire show to talking about why and how and what sort of ideas I put into that squat codex. So, you know what? Let's go ahead and get things started. So I want to go ahead and I got to hook. I got to send over to another software. So there's gonna be a couple of seconds here, and in these couple of seconds, while I'm patching things through and getting things squared away, why don't you go ahead and take a look at a couple of pieces of cool art from the Cursed Empire, the upcoming third edition of Cursed Empire, and we'll see you in just a second. Here we are with Chris Loizou, the mastermind behind Cursed Empire. A long time ago, had a different name, but we're just going to gloss over that. We're going to go into the future and talk about where all this came from and where it's headed is really what it comes down to, and why all of you guys out there, I've said this before. If I'm going to say anything on my channel, it's going to be more than likely something that I want you to take a look at or play or follow or in some fashion at least give some attention to. So the fact that I'm giving an entire episode to this license says something. So please pay attention. Don't go get a drink, or if you do, hit pause and then come back. So without further ado, Chris Loizou.
Brian, it's great to be here. Thanks very much for having me.
We were just saying before actually everything got all connected that this is one of Chris's first video interviews,
That's right.
which I'm honored and surprised because he has always, for the years, I mean, I've known you for a long time now.
Yep, it's going back nearly 20 years now.
Almost 20 years at this point. And the fact that I've always thought that you're unbelievably, you carry yourself well, and you're great in public scenes. And I mean, hell, it was the fact that you at your booth at I want to say it was in Origins.
It was Origins, the first.
Origins 1990 thing. I ran into, there was a booth that had a really couple of cool pieces of art, not like, not unlike the amazing art that we've got behind us right now. But it was very dark and gothic, and at that particular time in my life, I was I was looking for that kind of thing. The bright and shiny D&D, perfect, yes. The bright and shiny D&D at the time really just didn't speak to me as much as it used to. And me and my friends were walking around the convention, and we saw a table, and there was a banner ad that had this crazy tattooed, pierced guy with this knife that had all kinds of serrations on it. And I was like, well, let's stop in and listen for a little while. And the guy who was running the table actually said, well, we've got a couple empty spots if you want to sit in. And we didn't have tickets or anything, but obviously, if you get the invite, you take the invite. So we sat down and we played a little bit, and it got us hooked. And honestly, the hook that got us was at the end of the little session, not to like spoil anything, because it's 20 years old. But at the end of the little session, one of the players at the table was a plant, and was a spy for the other side. And right. in the last little combat with the bad guys, he totally turncoated on us, and it was such a shock that we were all looking at each other like, wait, what's going on? And he's like, haha, I'm one of these secret Darkoon cults. The mask comes off, and therein lies this half naked crazy cultist that then proceeded to try and kill all of us. And it sold us on it, and we followed the plant back to the booth where they were selling the books and things, and that's where I met Chris.
That's right. I actually remember very well.
I was going to shortly thereafter, I started doing a little writing for him, and I've been a big fan of the setting ever since. So let's start at the very beginning. How did Cursed Empire really become a thing? Like, it's come a long way, but where did it start off?
I mean, really, right, it started from a kind of homebrew game I ran years back, and we're talking. This is showing my age a little bit here. We're talking over 30 years ago. I was running a homebrew game for a bunch of friends in France where I lived at the time, and they were really enjoying the game. Had a lot of lethal combat, a lot of brutal creatures in the game setting, and I kind of designed this whole game world, the world of Thargos. You see here behind me on the card game, and we're big D&D players, Call of Cthulhu, a lot of the Chaosium licensed stuff, and we like Stormbringer, for example, as well, and MERP. But I just started designing this game and developing the setting, and my friend said to me, look, Chris, one of these days you just got to publish this stuff. It's pretty awesome. We're really enjoying it. So I kind of put it to one side and kind of not forgot about it, but thought, look, Chris, you got to progress your studies and stuff and find a job and do the usual stuff. Put it to one side, and I met my wife, Karen, who's been involved in this from the beginning. And I got talking to her about this. She wasn't really into gaming. She didn't know much about it. And she said, look, Chris, you really should publish this. Why don't you give it a shot? Little did she know those words she uttered. 2 years on, after typing up the game rules and laying out the first book, the first edition, we launched the book, 500 copies, self-financed, self-printed, self-edited, at a gaming convention in the UK called Conception, run by a really cool bunch of guys. Mm-hmm. They've been running conventions for donkey's years, for a long, long time. And it was great. We had fantastic support. We ran a lot of demos, and people loved the game. They loved the setting. It felt different. And, that was the first edition. We were doing well with that. And then the big thing for us, where things really changed, was actually Origins in the US. I did a second edition of the game book, and that was launched at Origins in the US. We had fantastic support from the organizers. They got us great exposure. We had 2 big demo rooms. I flew over. We had 4 GMs plus myself, 5 GMs. We had a full crew for the trade stand.
Mm-hmm.
And as you said, I mean, we were trying to stand out, the artwork, the design, the feel. I mean, people will recognize the branding, all this black and red kind of branding, and the kind of full face kind of graphics, really in your face, kind of grabs you from afar. And that really stood out, I think. And the fact we ran loads of demos, we had a great response. We pretty much sold out our inventory at the trade show, and we went from strength to strength. We did a lot of big shows as well in Las Vegas. Gen Con Indy, did Essen in Germany. We sold out there as well. So we had some really good years. We did about 6-7 years of gaming events. My wife and my friends really, and released 10 books over that period of time. And things went a bit quiet. The work and other stuff kind of took over. And really, for quite a few years, I stopped publishing stuff. But then, what's happened more recently, to kind of fast forward a bit, and we'll come back to more the details of the game. But with COVID, actually, I've been mulling over releasing a 3rd edition of the game, and a lot of work had been done in the meantime prior to this whole pandemic situation. But really, the pandemic was the catalyst. It just triggered something. I thought, look, I've got to do something creative again. Got to get back into this gaming stuff again. I really enjoyed it. I missed it a lot. And that's what got me back into where I'm now, what we're doing now.
It's like one positive thing that came out of the pandemic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It has been. And it's just been obviously Brian, we've obviously been involved in this, the card game side of things with you, obviously, and also the 3rd edition, a lot.
Think you may have frozen up there for a second. We may have some technical difficulties. Maybe. I don't know. We'll hang out and hope that that Chris comes back online for now. While we're waiting for him, I'll go ahead and fill in some of those years. We had there were several books that were made. Oh, I think we might be there we go.
Out.
So that's okay. Technical problems, it happens. It totally happens. I was about ready to say that some of those 10 books that were created, I was like, I actually had a hand in some of the stories and some of the writing of some of those, and it really was just a lot of fun. So it's a fun world, and it's a neat takeaway from it is definitely still a hard fantasy, but it's more of a hard fantasy that is not frivolous. It's not, you don't frolic from one town to the next looking for I'm looking for the next quest to solve. No, you go to the next town because you probably are running from the last one.
That's exactly it. Yeah. That's exactly it. And Brian, your involvement also when you got involved in the Atlas, some of the other books, it's really great to see someone kind of embrace the setting, the environment, and start, coming up with great ideas and writing really cool stuff. And I'm reading stuff and I'm thinking, wow, this guy's got it. He really has got the setting. He's got the environment. He's got the ambience, the feel. And that's the best moment for me when I have contributors, whether they're artists, yourself as a writer and contributor, other people have been involved. Got a guy composing music as well. It's fantastic to see how they've been inspired and what creativity that brings along for them. And I'm in awe. I'm like, wow, these guys, they got it. They got the setting, and they're enriching the setting. They're enriching the whole thing, and that's the best thing for me.
Well, I can speak for my 20-something-year-old self that the setting was such a pregnant option. Like there were so many little things that you had put in that original book that was like an open-ended idea. And for someone like myself, that if I see that open-ended idea, my first thought is, if I'm running a game in that area, what am I going to put in there to keep my players happy and keep them looking at stuff? And then that just basically became the stories, became the concept of things. I don't remember where it came from. whether it was your idea or my idea or somewhere in between. But I remember the blood rune magic, where we had magic that basically witches that carve runes in themselves to bleed out their power, and it was that was actually something that I brought as a huge plot to my home game, where they had to like stop a cult of these insidious blood witches, and it was a big it was a big detail for me. That was, I always love, if I'm creating something, I'm, there's only so many hours in a day and so many groups you can be in, but anything that I create, I want to hope that it's something that I would want at my table, either behind the screen or in front of it. And your world left me with so much room to be able to do that.
Well, that's really awesome, because I know whose idea that was, and it was yours. And that's another great example of, really taking on and understanding the setting so much that you have the kind of framework of the setting, but you have the freedom. And this for me is fundamental as a GM or a master of tale, an MT in Cursed Empire. But it's having that kind of framework that's kind of set up with the factions, the orders. You kind of get an idea how the kind of geopolitical system works and how people are interacting and who's in alliance with who's fighting who. But the framework is still provides enough space to develop other stuff. I mean, that was a prime example. I've had another guy who's really into the game previously, and he said, "Chris, what about centaurs? What are you doing with centaurs? I love centaurs as characters. Can we have as player characters?" And he designed a whole kind of cult of centaurs with really cool ideas about tattoos and scarification, and where they can literally kind of tell their stories and their heroic deeds. You can kind of read them on their bodies and stuff. And that, for me, this whole idea of kind of body art, tattoos, symbols, is really important, because taking that and the kind of blood rune magic as well, that kind of those kind of ideas, when you're in a situation where you are encountering a bunch of opponents, and you kind of you have either like knowledge of lore, whether it's imperial lore, so that's pretty much one of the good guys in the game, or darkened lore from the south. To be able to kind of look at an individual, suss them out, and look at them and say, "Oh, we really shouldn't be going there. This guy, I'm looking at the kind of symbols he has on him. That guy means business, and he's probably killed a lot of our type. Let's just stand back." So really, that notion of danger, and a lot of games, I think a lot of the kind of danger is around the creatures, the monsters you fight. Yeah, we have a whole bunch of really varied bestiary in Cursed Empire, but the other aspect, actually, some of the worst opponents are very human, or very much, are very, very close to home sometimes. I think that's another dimension people really enjoy.
Absolutely. I was gonna say that was the selling point for us, was the fact that someone at our table turned on us. And it wasn't even a turned on us because we made a bad decision. This was a planned and calculated event that we walked completely into. It was blindly like, yeah, let's go, fella. Let's walk into this dark bar. Ouch, I'm being stabbed. It was a first for us. We veteran role players, you've always had a situation where there's inter-party conflict. Everyone remembers that one time where that one player decides, well, I'm going to kill you, or I'm going to punch you.
That's right.
Haha. But 9 times out of 10, that gets resolved after one hit. Somebody clobbers somebody. Very rarely does a PC want to kill another PC. It normally comes and goes. It breathes through like a storm. The stress is eliminated, and then you move on to the next time. Oh, hey, we got to go fight goblins. And in Cursed Empire, that was really the first time that we had felt, okay, no, this guy who for the last hour and a half has been on our side fighting right next to us, is now he's as bad as anybody behind the Master Tail screen.
Absolutely.
And that was, if not worse, because he knows what we're capable of.
Exactly.
That actually leads, I think, perfectly into one of the things that I think that lends Cursed Empires, or Cursed Empire, sorry. I always, for whatever reason, I always pluralize it. Like I always have. It's I don't know.
That could work, because there are different notions of what the Empire should look like. There's maybe more than one, depending on how you look at it.
Well, there is definitely, in a lot of games, there's, man versus God, man versus environment, man versus man. In this instance, it really is, it sets you up for almost government versus government, where it is even if one government is a very loose description of that sort of thing, But you are definitely maybe not personally taking sides, but you're going to find yourself on
Yes,
one side or the other, or smashed in between in the case of like, alien
absolutely.
pirates and things like that.
Yep.
What that's I think that's one of the things that does stand out for Curse Empire is it reminds me a little bit of the late 80s Greyhawk, where you had where
Absolutely.
you were part of a kingdom that was
Yeah.
at a greater war that you might not have anything to do with, but you're part of it. You can't help it. You live in this place. There are people that hate you because of it.
That's exactly right.
Or that suddenly have your back because you say I'm from this town originally. I lived there for 2 months before my parents took me away, and they're like, oh, excellent, you're one of us.
Exactly.
I guess I didn't
Whether you like it
realize
or
that.
not. Yep. But that's the
So
key point.
I was gonna say, what if you could do like the I don't want to say the elevator pitch, but like if you wanted to tell someone where the war came from, like where the main two factions, obviously the Imperial, and then the was it Kurnos? I'm trying to say if I said that
Chronicles.
right. Yeah. What do you if someone asked you why are these two sides fighting? What would your answer be?
I mean, it really comes down to it's a clash of cultures. It's really the empire stands for old values, old ways, and I'm really passionate about ancient history, and I'm ancient Greek history amongst other things, and the kind of notion of city states. And the empire really is a collection of city states that adhere to an old code. They the values, they have a very high self-esteem. They think they're the good guys pretty much. They think their values are right, just. But there's been a degree of jealousy in the South. They were less wealthy in the South. A lot of jealousy really that caused them to aspire or want to have the material wealth of the North to some degree. Also, there's this notion of bloodlines and purity of bloodlines. And with the emperor himself being assassinated by one of his key generals, that plunged the whole setting into civil war. So you have this tightly knit city-state with a common enemy, and they really are united. They're very, very solidly united, more than the Greek city-states would have been, in fact, even if they united against Persia historically. There's that kind of notion of uniting, but they are very strong united. In the South, I mean, Karnataka is the South. That very much is loose alliances, backstabbing, conflict of interest, trying to get one over each other. Then there's a kind of common enemy. They align against a common enemy. They detest the empire and everything it represents, but they are not too good amongst themselves either. So it's pretty chaotic down there, and it can range from very decadent, very wealthy merchant families through to orc-infested, creature-infested pits and anything in between. So it's that kind of clash of cultures. You also have, even from a technology standpoint, you have the North who adhere to, they actually use a lot of old armor, old equipment, almost like Bronze Age in some cases. And the South are more technologically advanced in many cases. And there's a lot of contradictions here, because at the same time in the Empire, assassin guilds, thief guilds are actually banned. They always have been banned. They're outlawed, but they're actually tolerated because it's just the lesser of two evils. They're considered actually a necessary evil. So on the face of it, the propaganda of the Empire is, we're the goody two shoes, we're the good guys, we're the just ones. But actually, under the surface, they are almost as brutal in their methods as the South. And that's the kind of hypocrisy as well, and I like in the setting, and people seem to like a lot. There's that kind of rich tapestry in the background, this kind of civil war, this massive conflict. There's over 100 orders and factions and cults, many of them at each other's throats, some of them aligned. It's a really, from a geopolitical standpoint, it's really complex, the tapestry. And as a GM, you can delve into that, you can develop that a lot as players as well. Or as you said, that can sit in the background, and you could be adventuring with your own plots, your own story arc, your own, let's say, driver to progress your characters. And it's all got that kind of conflict. So you can have as much as a complex scenario as you want, or you can have a very straightforward adventuring campaign. There's a lot of stuff in there, a lot of material to really develop good games.
I remember there is a page in the Darkhood source book, which I have to apologize to the fans. We ordered. I was going to have books to show you from the second edition of the game, but COVID being COVID and the Postal Service being the Postal Service, and they didn't arrive in time for us to film. So my apologies. I'll show them to you in a future episode. I'll be like, hey, look, they're here. But in the Darkroom source book, there is a page that is, if you glance at it, it looks like a high school diagram of a very obtuse molecule. There's all kinds of little circles and circles and lines and dotted lines and circles. And I remember it being, glancing through it the first time, just be like, all right, whatever. And then coming back to it, and it is, that page alone is a wealth of information of how these Darkroom cults deal with one another.
Yes.
It's this one hates this one, but this one's okay with this one. This one secretly dislikes this one. I mean, it's a soap opera with knives and poisons is really what it kind of comes down to between these various cults. It is again one of those things that drew us to the game is, you've got factions within factions, and you could have an entire party full of characters that all hate one another, but collectively they hate the Empire more.
Yes.
Or you could have an Imperial party that is, ready to stamp out any Southern reference. So you just crush them as soon as you can. And then they learn down the road that some of these guys aren't so bad. Like they just happen to live south of the border.
Exactly.
It is what it is. Exactly. So one of the things that I always liked about Thargos collectively is you handle religion in a very neutral way. Like it is not I mentioned earlier, man versus man versus environment, man versus gods. This game sort of takes you kind of out of that a little bit. Like that man versus gods really isn't kind of there. Can you explain to them about the elemental cults?
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for that, Brian. I mean, the Great Cataclysm, which was a major event in the kind of the setting history, basically caused a massive cataclysmic event that shut off the gods. There is a pantheon of old gods, and they were going to shut off from the main plane of existence where the players and characters evolve. And all they had time for was to send one envoy each. So one envoy of the gods has been sent to Thargos to try and bring them back into that plane of existence, but they're shut off. And what happened, you had, after the cataclysm, you had a massive manifestation of the power of nature. Earthquakes, tsunami, you name it, incredible, on an incredible scale. It wiped out almost half the population of the planet of Thargos. It was a massive cataclysmic event. And what happened, you had masses of terrified survivors who turned to the temples of the old gods, praying for salvation. And the gods just couldn't respond. They just couldn't. They were cut off. What happened? The former priests of those temples saw, wait a minute, we have all these massive people coming to our temples with offerings and sacrifices, and the gods aren't around anymore. I'm going to grab me some power. So what actually happened? Some of the priests and some of the unscrupulous mages and the like grabbed power. There's a massive power grab, and they'd converted the temples into the four elemental cults, the four base elements: fire, earth, air, water. And what happened then? They built up a lot of power around that, and they even outlawed magic, which is pretty hypocritical. So a lot of them actually are spellcasters. So they really just consolidated their power base. So you have masses of people terrified, turn to the temples for solace and for spiritual support and aid and material support, and they were there for them. So a lot of the coffers of the temples were emptied, and population were helped. But actually, what happened? That redrew completely the whole, let's say, power play, the whole layout of power and where power resided back to the temples, who were actually a little bit on the decline. And I have to say, in this setting, religion, a lot of it is pretty hypocritical. Yeah. It's manipulated and it's twisted, sadly. And the power is held by a handful of individuals. How religious characters are in the game is down to the players. I mean, some can be really fervent. I mean, Darkans are fervent zealots, really, from that perspective. A lot of the knights, the Imperial Knights or Crimson Knights or other factions are very, very loyal and very fervent, very religious, and let's say God-fearing or element-fearing. But generally speaking, it's down to the players how they want to play. Once again, there's this rich tapestry in the background as a GM or as players, you can delve into that. You can really develop a whole campaign around that notion of religion, and bringing maybe back the old gods could be a really cool story arc. But
So that could be a pretty cool if you had somebody who like honestly truly believed in the old ways, and through those minuscule envoys actually they can kind of be like, hey, no, they're still around, I promise.
yes.
Like they're watching, just not as well as before. We can help them. Let's be their eyes and ears. Try and drum up that business, and then immediately getting stamped down by
exactly.
the powers that be, because you're moving in on our turf.
Exactly. And just what is interesting also, when you have the four elements in the Empire, you have what is known as the Elemental Church. So they're pretty much aligned, that those four factions, the four elemental factions, work together as one church of the Empire. You will see in different cities, the temples will be more prominent. If you're in the city of Elios on the coast, there's a massive water temple, smaller temples for obviously for earth, fire, and air. But in the south, this notion of Church of Elementals is not so strong. And once again, they tend to fight, a lot of infighting, a lot of trying to exert their influence and their power. So once again, a lot more loosely aligned, and also diametrically opposite. You take a fire cultist from the south, or Karnakos, and a fire cultist from the Empire. They are these sworn enemies. Each end of the scale, they're absolutely, if they're fervent, if they're warrior priests or darkens or knights, they are fanatically opposed.
Which is cool, because otherwise you could, there's always that that theme sometimes of, our politics aside, we serve the same power. The fact that they take that politics and even put it directly into their style of worship just as much, I think it allows for an even deeper line in the sand. You've got someone who might just dislike the way you do things, but then there's also, no, I actually dislike the way that you live. Like the fact that you believe differently in the same element that I do is it brings me to brings me to screaming fits. Like I said, so Cursed Empire is again, I keep pluralizing it. Cursed Empire is it's awesome. It was in the first. I missed out in the first edition. I got the first edition book, but it was the second edition that really grabbed us. And now looking forward, we have a third edition coming.
That's right.
Now, for the people who haven't seen this before, any of the editions, it was not a D&D clone. It didn't run on the D20 system. It didn't run on anything like that. It was its own system from Jump Street. It always has been. Going into the third edition, what do you think is system-wise, like talking it all thematics aside, just literally kind of the crunch of the system? Yep. What do you think is a good reason why? Because I know there's a ton of people out there that are looking for their other game system to play. We play D&D on Fridays, but I kind of want to try this other thing. What's going to grab them and make them want to come to Cursed Empire?
Yeah, I mean, a few things. I mean, when we looked at second edition and we looked at what worked and what didn't work so well, we had kind of two different reactions to the game mechanics. Some people love the crunch. The combat system in second edition was very, very crunchy, was very detailed. You had a lot of called locations, different armor types. You could cobble together different armor types on the same character. There was a lot of variety. It was pretty detailed and crunchy. Some people really loved that because it was very, very detailed. Other people were turned off, to be frank. A lot of people love the setting. They love the kind of environment. They love the artwork, the graphic design, and so on. But some people were really turned off in second edition because of the game mechanics. Chris, is just too crunchy, this stuff, and it's too heavy. A lot of game systems are going much more rules light. You need to kind of rethink this. So what actually happened as a result in third edition, what we did, and it's percentile, it's still D100 based, okay, but from the original 10 or so core stats, we're down to 3 now.
Oh,
so
wow.
We're down to,
okay.
down to might, mind, and mysticism. There's 3 core stats now, and there are multiple sub game mechanics within the third edition. So there's a slightly more crunchy version. So certainly the old nostalgic players from second edition, first edition will find some of that crunch Not quite as crunchy as before, I have to say. And then there's two other variants in combat. There's really a very, very rules-light version of combat, for example, and for the combat rules, and somewhere in between. So we actually have three different kind of game mechanic levels to really, for any GM or gaming group to adapt to their game style, from almost diceless through to crunchy gameplay. And they are interchangeable. In that sense, you could have an encounter in the lighter kind of mechanic if you wanted to. So that really allows for a lot of flexibility there. And also, one of the things was a huge hit in the second edition was the rune-based magic. It was a massive hit. That I got a lot of good feedback. People love that. In fact, you can make spells on the fly and stuff.
Yeah.
We reworked the magic system in third edition, but we also still have a compatibility with that variant because that was very much what people like to retain.
That was a huge thing. I remember almost everybody at my table wanted to, when I was like, all right, I would like to have at least a couple of martial classes, at least one mage. It was real easy to flip everybody. They're like, no, I want to be a water mage. I want to be based off of primarily around runes and. So to give you an idea how we mentioned that the rune magic of Curse and Empire is unlike D&D where you've got like specific spells that are like, here is your spell, you get this at this time and it does this thing, or like in Shadowrun where it's like, here's your spell and you can change kind of how powerful it is, but it's still going to do the same thing. Curse and Empire always had almost like a magic equation. Like you would basically build the math of your spell with these rune cards. The runes would be like the rune of man, the rune of fire, the rune of the rune of targeting. Like basically give yourself individual elements of this spell, and depending on how many magic points you kind of invested into this spell to activate these runes, it would then barf out the effect. And then obviously some of these spells you would become regulars, like, oh, fire plus target plus man is how I throw a firebolt. And in your game, you would just then look at your master tales and say, I'm putting down these cards and I'm throwing a firebolt, But like, if you were really kind of in a situation where you're like, all right, well, I'm going to do, the rune of secrets and this and that, and see if I can't like burn open the lock because I don't know what's on the other side. Or you could basically kind of on the fly figure out how to manipulate this magical world through these runes. And it was not only just a cool system, it was a cool in-game play sort of way, because you had to, they weren't just runes that you like thought in your head and said, rune. You actually had to find a way to like script them out and make you had to write out your spell. And the thing that got me that I will remember this forever and a day. I had our water mage cleric person, if you want to call them that. She basically wore a shield, and on the inside of her shield, she had a layer of beeswax. And I would use the hilt, basically the palm of her warhammer, the pommel, and would in the wax put her runes to cast her spells. And I was like, that is the coolest.
I forgot about that in the story. You're right.
I was like, that is the coolest idea. That came out of a player, and I ended up putting it into a story because she was like, so I've got to write down all my spells to be able to cast them. And I was like, yep. And they were like, well, but like, when they're done, can I just erase it like on a chalkboard? I was like, yeah. And she goes, yeah, but chalk sucks. What if it's raining? And so it just kind of turned into this thing where she had a waterproof rune board basically in the inside of her shield. It was awesome. And so I ended up putting it into a story in one of the books. So knowing that Rune Magic is still there in third edition it makes me so happy because that was such a selling point.
I can tell you at one stage when we were looking at it, it was taken out, and I looked at it again and I said, no way, that's got to be back in. That's got to go back in because that's people love that. And as you said, I've had players on the fly they have these rune cards on the fly. I'm going to try this and this and this on the fly, on the spur of the moment stuff, and hope it has the right desired effect. Then often doesn't if I'm the GM. But
I was just saying, when some of my favorite things as an MT was when they were like, I'm going to try and put these together, and then obviously you don't want to be too mean and like stamp down their creativity, but things just didn't work exactly the way you thought they did.
Exactly.
Yeah, oh yeah, so good, such a great system. So I'm glad that that's still there. Continue. I'm sorry, I totally
No,
derailed
no,
you.
that's great. No, that's great. In terms of the yeah, so really we took on board a lot of feedback, and just for information on the website, there's a whole kind of explanation of what's new in third edition. Why do we redo a new edition? If you like other types of games, what kind of games would appeal to you? Would Cursed Empire appeal to you? So we kind of made some comparisons to other games people like to play, and it really is the result of a lot of feedback we had on the game mechanics, the
Awesome.
game system, just to reinforce, to actually emphasize the atmosphere, because people got the setting, people got the atmosphere. It's just some people found the mechanics clunky, heavy, clunky, too crunchy for their own gaming style. So we've hopefully taken that on board. And I have to say, as this will go to Kickstarter, there will still be opportunity for people interested to have an influence and impact on the final rule set. So at some stage we'll be posting drafts of the rules. People can have input. We're really open. I really want people to get involved in the creative process for third edition. I really do.
So you mentioned the Kickstarter, which is actually I was about ready to segue into this anyway. So the fact that the stats you at one time had 10 different attributes, and you said you brought them down to might, mysticism, and what was the third one? Mind. So it's odd that I happen to have right here a handful of these are these are effectively kind of prototype cards. I've showed them before on the show, but if you look down at the bottom, there are three little things there. There's a red one, a green one, and a blue one. The red one is might. The green one, I believe, is mind.
That's right.
And the blue one is mysticism. So it's almost like you could say your character in the Cursed Empire Third Edition game, because you only have those three stats, could be really easily translated into kind of almost card format for this new idea that you have definitely ran with. So I have mentioned before that I initially started this track system card game, and then Chris was interested in it, and the Cursed Empire guys picked it up, and he has since they have really kind of cleaned it up and made it definitely their own when it comes to the setting. It is some of these cards are fantastic. As the art is gorgeous. I can't say enough. The artist that they've picked up. What's his name?
Ryan Verhagen out of the Netherlands.
So Ryan is destroying. He is killing it in this art. The art, because we've got the survive the Grax dragon fire. It's just a dragon that's blasting this area. So we're going to take a couple of seconds. The third edition of the role-playing game can basically be played alongside almost. I won't say they are best friends or anything, but there's a way for you to use the card game
yes
in the role-playing game.
Absolutely.
So you're talking about multiple ways to play the game, as far as combat's concerned, crunchy factor. There's actually even another way that you can forego the normal concept of a role-playing game and get out your Heroes of Thargos cards and play through almost like a narrative element in story mode of the card game, which is so story mode is not something that I had ever envisioned with the card game when it went to Chris. So this is definitely his baby. And looking through the preliminary concepts and things of how story mode is going to work, it's pretty rad. Basically, you put together kind of your party of heroes, the adventuring party, so to speak, or I don't want to say heroes, but party of characters, and you build a deck of basically a deck of cards of the things that you want to hopefully accomplish in this sort of narrative part of the story, and then you play through. You play through kind of a mapped out. So okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. The regular card game, when you're playing against, so Chris and I were going to play. I happen to have this really cool neoprene mat here that I believe someone's going to have in a Kickstarter soon. I don't know. I'm sure if you go to the beginning of this video, you'll probably find a link to that, which you should follow, and then go ahead and watch that because it's coming out soon. And then at the end of this video, I'm sure you're probably gonna find that link again. But there's gonna be this really cool. It's so weird. I hate putting things in front of my face because I don't know if you can see me.
We can see it. It's good.
So there's this really cool mat to play the game, and the way the game works is you both basically sit across from each other, or one would hope you sit across from each other. Maybe during the pandemic you put a little distance between you, and you put out mission cards. Your mission cards, if I can find them. Mission cards, these kind of, oh, that's shiny. Okay. Got it perfectly in the light of my computer. So these mission cards, they've got a victory point total, basically something that it's worth, how much you have to beat your opponent by in order to claim the mission. And then there's other factors that you can play a mission card out of your hand as a modifier. The primary mechanic of this game is that basically you set yourself up in what's called tracks, and the track is I'm building my character. So in this case, I've got a character. We got Chrysos, the Blade of Condor. I keep doing that. I'm gonna move this light so it doesn't do that again. There we go. So you've got Chrysos, the Blade of Condor, this awesome knight who actually have his other larger version of his art over here in the corner. He is a strength 9 character, which basically means he's got a whole lot of power as far as like his individual stats, and he probably has like a special power as well that like allows him to adjust things on the board or maybe do something special with your hand. In this case, his hand size is 5 cards, which is a decent chunk of cards for you to be able to be playing back and forth. But what this means is if he's part of your team, you need to at least get 9 victory points just to basically claim his part of this as victory. One of the things about the Heroes of Thargos game is basically you kind of set your own victory conditions. If you want to take a bunch of little weenie guys that are sneaky and not very good at combat, and they're going to get trounced if someone gets their hands on them, you take a bunch of low power guys and hope that you get those missions and rack them up and do all your sneaky tricks and get them done quick, because you won't need as many victory points to win the game as your opponent did if they took a whole bunch of powerhouses, because their victory point totals are higher in what they need to succeed.
Yep.
And so you play through your hand of cards. And your deck has got all kinds of little things. You've got little lasting cards, which has got an L on it that shows basically this is something. In this case, what I grab? A Van Dock Familiar. It's this cute little kind of lizard bunny squirrel thing.
Yep.
We're gonna call it a lizard bunny squirrel thing. That it adds it, although it takes away from someone's from their might, it adds to their mysticism. It's basically a little magic familiar. So you put this on a character, bloop, to increase their mysticism and hopefully make them easier to defeat missions that require higher mysticism.
And Brian, just to comment on the cards generally, you mentioned about the, you have the mission cards and so on, and the under the skull in the middle of the card. I also added A for action, L for lasting, and C for character. This is actually for colorblind players. So in some of the feedback we had, people were saying that, can you try and make these colorblind friendly for colorblind gamers?
That's fantastic.
So you can immediately straight away see what category of card you're playing.
That's excellent. That's excellent. I actually did not realize that. I knew that letter was there to define the card, but I didn't realize that was the reason. That's really cool. So speaking of action cards, there's these green cards that I've gone through and read through the action cards on these, and they're some of my favorites because it represents almost like a moment in game. Like whether in this case, one of my favorite pieces of art is the Krill Horned Koss Stomp. So it's this giant critter that obviously when it stomps on you, it sucks. And basically it allows that you play this out of your hand, that if you didn't want to use it to modify a mission, you just played it for the action. In this case, it says one lasting card of your choice is returned to its owner's hand and cannot be reattached next turn. So effectively, you're playing this kind of narrative moment where this Krill Horncoss runs through and kind of boots the like whatever. In the case of like the familiar, he stomps on the guy and the familiar goes flying. And I'll have to get him. I'll have to go and pick him up some other time. But he's not here to help me now. I dig. You can really get as narrative as you want with some of these cards. Whereas this one is just a very basic card. This is the Zombie Pit. And this got a picture of a cool zombie rising up out of the grave. And it's play on a track, and a track is basically one character versus one character with a mission in the middle. It says play on a track. This card is played as a bonus modifier card during that next conflict on that track. So you basically have added the zombies. There's zombies running around on the track, and the modifier value in this case +2 is just there. You're almost like setting it up as, okay, if no matter what happens here, we know there are zombies in play. This is going to be something that's coming out to mess with us next turn, or the next time that we decide to use this as our battle zone. And then you just go back and forth, basically trying to accomplish these missions in the regular game until you get enough victory points to equal your character power, and then you yay, I won, and your opponent goes home crying. Well, not really, obviously, unless they've got very, very thin skin. But that's a whole other episode. And then story mode is more along the lines of, instead of me building my deck to beat these missions fast and get through them against my opponent, I'm actually building a deck to get through a series of missions, where it's more along the lines of like, this mission leads to this mission, leads to this mission. You're telling the story. You're going through and doing this kind of card game version of what an adventuring party does, but without having to do all of the getting breakfast and sleeping and all that stuff. You're really just kind of focusing on the exciting parts of the adventure.
Yeah.
So what it lets you do is, and I'm sure as Chris, as the Kickstarter comes out and more cards get the cards expand, you could in effect, depending on your characters and depending on like, let's say that I built a character who's very similar to this Chris Oss guy. He's just a Billy Badass knight. I could basically use him to kind of represent my concept of a character in the deck. And then if I played a wizard and, I'll throw in the familiar cards, you can build your deck based off of your party and then try and get through this adventure. I'm not trying to say that you could use the card game to like supplant the role-playing game, but you could use it to, if you had something in game, we always, all of us role players out there, we run into the situation where someone's like, what do you do in your downtime? Downtime doesn't really exist in the real world. You are always doing something. Yeah. Well, you could say, let's say one of the characters is like, it's going to take me, 3 months in this city to build my new armor or whatever. What do we do during that 3 months? You could look at as your master of tales, you could look at your group and say, all right, guys, I have an idea. For the 3 months, we're going to run a story mode. And, depending on how you guys do, how far you get, I'm going to give bonuses to your characters. And then those 3 months are done. You've got your armor. You're ready to go into your next big role-playing moment. But that way you actually still have some story that has been told. You still have, there's things that have happened. And at any time, honestly, if you were doing the story mode, like reading through it, because the story mode lays out the missions, kind of as almost like a track of events. If you got to one as a player, and I know as a master of tales, if my player said that, if you got to a thing and like that particular card is, smash a Darkoon den, I could say, hey, you know what? I really want to role play this in real time.
You've got it right. That's exactly how you can use it. Yeah.
Let's pause the story deck right now.
Yeah.
And our next gaming session, I want us to smash these Darkoon in the face.
You've got it. That's exactly the whole concept behind it.
And I think that's going to be, not just a cool selling piece to a fantastically designed, well thought out card game engine, but I think that it's gonna be a way for someone to break the monotony sometimes. I recently had I did a Q&A session on the channel where someone had asked me, one of their questions was, what do you do when a game gets to be a drag? When it feels like an obligation to play every other Thursday. And I was like, well, honestly, it's time for you to take a step back, relax, maybe play a board game, get your gaming group together, do something different. Yeah, you're not making any forward progression in your story or whatever. That's fine. But I think this might actually help break up some of that monotony if you are stuck in that kind of rut. And hopefully no one, the Cursed Empire guys out there, when they're playing, they're never going to fall into that rut and they're going to be super excited all the time. But humans are humans, and this is what's going to happen. It does give you another option to kind of get a different taste at the table, even if you're not just playing the game to play the game. And then I know, for instance, so he sent me, he being Chris, I'm talking to him like he's not in the room. Chris sent me this kind of initial card pack of the Heroes of Thargos, and I've been through it. I've looked through it. I played with my kid, which didn't go so well because he has the attention of a 12-year-old, because he's 12, and I realized that if I didn't say that, someone might be like, "Man, that's super mean." It's like, no, he's 12. It's an appropriate level of attention. But I look forward, knowing the stuff that's in the world of Thargos, knowing, I am a huge fan of the Alien pirates, of this like heavy, almost Jamaican feel of, it's a very Caribbean feel of a town. But there's a cartoon from when I was but a wee lad, called The Pirates of Darkwater. And when we were working on the Thargan, the Alice of Thargos for second edition, when we got to Elios and those pirates and that sort of thing, that was such a heavy, like, the image in the back of my head were these just colorful, adorned, scimitar wielding, fun-loving acrobat weirdos that, like, someone sees them coming and they're like, oh man, aliens have hit the town, hide your booze, and that's. I hope that we get to see. I really want the Kickstarter to do really well. So obviously, you guys, back the hell out of it. But I would love to see an expansion with a bunch of crazy alien pirates and actions that are, them hitting town, and missions that, low end missions that are literally like, get drunk and don't fight. Try to make it through the night unscathed. Stay out of jail should be a great mission. These are the things that there's so many cool things for Thargos that I think is gonna translate really, really well for this card game. And then I don't want to put any horses in front of carts, so I'm not going to talk about potential other futurisms, but I do know that Chris is not done with the greater concept of Cursed Empire and Thargos. The role-playing game and the card game are not the end of his ideas. And obviously, if I can be of any help, I will where I can. So that's that is fantastic, and I'm super excited there. Way back in the day, Chris and I actually talked about this online just recently. I had started several laptops ago, and the words have faded away into the cyberscape, sadly. I had started. I had a really, I really kind of fell in love with the concept of different, like how there are different cultures of humans, that there would be different cultures of orcs and goblins. And I absolutely loved the concept of how the Darkoon sometimes do not like Darkoon. I love the concept of how orcs should sometimes not like orcs. It shouldn't be D&D where orcs high five and we go in and raid the village. But they should absolutely have their own opinions about each other, and not even necessarily like tribal aspects, just a different, almost like it's another level of civilizations and cultures on top of it. And I had started an orc and goblin book a long time ago, that is since been lost to history, sadly. But I know that if I get the free time and the option in the future, I will probably try my hardest to talk poor Chris into letting me add some of these ideas back into the world once third edition is a thing. When it is a tangible thing that people can get their hands on and such. Speaking of which, so what kind of timetable were you looking at as we get to? I just looked down at the time, and we gotta think about wrapping up here pretty soon. What kind of timetable were you looking at for both the card game Kickstarter, which we know is coming right around the corner, and the third edition role playing, where my avid fans and subscribers can get their hands on this stuff and start playing and letting you know how amazing you are.
Thank you very much. And hopefully, the all going well, the card game Kickstarter should go live, if not late April, early May. So we're pretty much ready to go. We're really close to be ready to launch that. And for the third edition RPG, probably mid to late summer, where we're at the moment. So that's progressing well. So yeah, we're on track. The card game's on track for that time scale, and third edition's being laid out now, big typeset, and still some RPs coming in. But it's been written. It's all written up, ready to go, and it's going to be a pretty hefty tome. We also have some. There's a few extras in there as well. There could be some interesting stretch goals going forward. So there's some stuff being worked on in the background. I can't say too much about at the moment.
No worries. Now, for the people who are, I have a very heavy role playing game following in the channel. There's a lot of people who specifically watch. I have a heavier war game following, but primarily it is the role playing one I'm listening to right now. For those people who are interested in the world, but maybe not the card game, do you know roughly? I mean, is there going to be a way for them? Is there going to be some stuff for the role playing game that's built into the card game Kickstarter, so they should at least pay attention to it as add-ons and things, or is it going to be kind of a sideline sort of deal?
No, there's going to be a lot of connection between the two Kickstarters and the assets, basically. I think the story mode side of things is going to be developed quite a bit further. The idea is that the expansions to the card game will release a whole bunch of scenarios. I've just got a prototype, so excuse the quality of printing, but this is just the city of Kondar you have here, where there's a whole bunch of new mission cards that go with that. These are just prototypes at the moment. There's a whole bunch of mission cards and some new action cards as well. So, for example, you have things like one of the missions is to infiltrate the Kondar spy ring. And one of the action cards is to basically give the spy ring a tip-off that they have someone infiltrated. So as the opposing player, you can injure a character, you can cause problems. So these new card releases, part of the expansions, really will develop the story mode a lot further. And we'll build on the core deck that comes part of the Kickstarter. And then there's a lot of other tie-ins with the RPG. The intention is with the RPG Kickstarter also is to have additional cards as part of maybe some of the stretch goals. There's a whole bunch of things happening there as well. So yeah, and talking of a third Kickstarter, there will be miniatures. The plan has some miniatures, a miniature-based game. I can't say too much at the moment, but there are minis also under review now. We got sculptors lined up for STL file sculpting and 3D sculpts ready to go. So that's also getting pretty exciting as well. But first of all, we want to have two successful Kickstarters and build on that with the other game. The idea is also a degree of interchangeability. So if there's the miniatures, the cards, these things can be mix and match. And going back to you were saying, Brian, when I mentioned some of the, let's say some of the fans of the RPG, and some of them are not necessarily card gamers. When I mentioned about the card games, so I'm not sure about card games. When I presented to them, they said, actually, you know what, Chris, if I can get my gaming group together on a Friday night, I don't want to prepare a big scenario, spend a lot of time getting things prepared, get pizzas and beer in, get the card game out, and as you were explaining, run a side quest. It could be, as you said, characters that are similar to the party, or you could play a totally different bunch of guys who are or characters doing a side quest and develop another story arc, get some more access to more secrets or information as part of the campaign. I think that whole story mode is important.
That'd be kind of cool. Almost run like like your regular game is the primary plot, and then when you run the story mode, you're like, we're taking a glimpse across the border and looking over at something else that's happening. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, even the totally different parties, so completely removed from the core party. They could be allied, they could even be enemies, but you just get a glimpse of something else, which then feeds back into the main story arc of the campaign. So really,
that's fantastic.
Just as you recall, with that notion of having the rune castle magic, you do stuff on the fly. That notion of having another game and a game within a game that's completely standalone as a card game, but can be, with a bit of flexibility and a bit of imagination from the MT, the Master of Tales, and the players, can be adapted and used just to kind of provide more variety, as you said, less monotony in terms of the gaming experience. I like having a lot of different tools and assets as an MT to make the game exciting and fun.
Awesome. That is awesome. All right. Well, I'm gonna let you go. I'm sure you've got all kinds of pre-Kickstarter business to do. And I also want to make sure that we wrap up in a timely fashion so people actually will watch all this video and get all this awesome information. Chris, it's always a pleasure, man. Like when you reached out a few months back and said this was happening, I was elated. Not just for the actual connection and the conversation again, but to know that Cursed Empires has not died on the vine, that it is still still slugging away and has got a great future ahead of it. And I hope that me and my subscribers and the people this reaches out to, I hope that maybe they can give you a hand and make this this is a good thing, and this needs to happen, not just for you, but for the people out there, that the fans of the game from before and the fans that don't know that they're fans yet, because you will be when you actually get a chance to dig in and take a look at it. So
I really appreciate that, Ryan. I appreciate your time, and also I just want to reach out just to everybody, and those Kickstarters will be an opportunity to get involved in the creative process, to get involved in some of the card design, some of the ideas, but also I can't wait to get back onto the convention circuit. Hopefully meet some of you guys face to face and run a game or two.
Absolutely. Maybe you know what? Maybe sometime I can play the plant.
Well, there you are.
Bring it full circle. Bring new people in by being the guy that backstabs them. So, well, it has been a pleasure. And for those of you who are watching, I'm going to go put up a couple more pieces of cool art between here and when I get the rig set back up to talk to you directly. And other than that, where can they find you? Obviously, I'm putting Cursed Empire website and the Kickstarter stuff in the description of the video, but where can they find you if they want to send you messages, discuss things, follow Cursed Empire as it progresses into its greatness?
Ideally, get on the Facebook page, join the Facebook page. You can message me direct through there. I'm on Instagram as well, and of course the website itself. And there's, of course, the Kickstarter preview pages to keep informed of the releases as they come out. But yeah, Facebook's probably the best place to start.
Fantastic. Awesome, buddy. So thank you so much for being on and taking your time. For those of you who don't know, Chris is currently located in France, so it's really late at night for him right now. He
time for a beer.
No, it's not quite that late.
10 p.m. 10 p.m.
So it's we're showing you how the sausage is made. It is only in the afternoon here, so I'm glad that you took the time out to talk with us. And I can't, obviously, for those of you who are watching, as more stuff comes out and more, the closer we get to the Kickstarter and stuff, I'm still going to let you guys know about the stuff that as it happens. We'll still talk about it. I just really kind of wanted to shine a spotlight on something really, really cool that's coming out around the corner. And I hope that you guys will take the time to do some investigating of your own and follow the links, and even it's just to check out some of the cool art, because the art itself it's very, very good and very stylized. You will see creatures that you have never imagined seeing before. That's 100% true. All right.
Thanks very much, Brian. Thanks.
We will see you later, Chris.
Everybody. Stay safe.
Definitely.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. That was awesome. That was a great interview with Chris. I hope you enjoyed it. I need to go through and re-edit all my stuff and get everything squared away. So thank you so much for listening, and hopefully you'll follow the links, you'll follow the Kickstarter, and I really do think you will enjoy, even if you just like the card game itself, follow the Kickstarter, and when it pops out, give Chris some love, and I won't lie, maybe having something that says that I designed a really awesome, well well-supported Kickstarter will help me in the future too. Either way, I really want to say thank you for watching and listening to something that's really kind of a part of my professional history. And honestly, if you're a role player or a game player and you just really kind of like the idea, follow all the links and go take a look. And it is a really cool world. And I know, while I can't say exactly some of the stuff that he's got planned, a lot of you will be extremely happy to know some of the things that he has kind of on the back burner for Cursed Empire. So basically, thank you for watching is really what it comes down to. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, tell your friends. On an electronic level, on a personal level, when you get a chance to get your vaccination, get your vaccination. Let's beat this virus. Wear your mask, even if you are vaccinated. Wear your mask anyway, because there's other people out there that haven't had a chance yet. And have fun, enjoy yourself. We'll see you next week. But more than anything else, smile, de-stress, realize that spring is on its way, and go out there, have fun, and play some games. See you next week.